is. How's that? Welcome, everybody. Welcome, people. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the stream. I see a couple of viewers that I hope are viewers. Yeah, and Cranky is here. Welcome, Cranky. Woo. So, I'm playing around with new OBS settings. I have an exciting new feature on the stream that you will see over. I think it's over there. Um, you'll see in the corner is my point. That there, over there. We have Puppy Cam on the stream today. You'll see dogs. Hopefully, Lordy, hear the dogs in the background. Dogs may show up on the stream. They're not happy with Puppy Cam. Hey, good morning. Oh, look at that. It's here. Yes. Look, your chat is up. Is that what that box was? All right, I should move. I don't know. I should move that. Good morning, Abe. Good to see you. There, we're going to put that there. I think that's you. There. And then the puppies are being really annoying, but it'll be fine. They'll be fine. There. Okay, so we're playing around with some new features on the stream today. We've got a puppy cam. It may or may not show live cute misbehaving dogs later. And Misha, come here. Come be on the puppy cam. No, he's not feeling it. There. And we got a viewer question over the. Oh, and sorry I haven't been around the last couple weeks. I missed you all too. It has been a bunch of. Last week, I was actually running a tech conference that fell on the Sunday. We did a virtual conference for women in agile software development. It was awesome. I should find the YouTube link and put it in the chat. I will do that at some point. If you're interested in that sort of thing, go check it out. It was fantastic. And the week before that, I don't even remember. I had a good reason. I don't remember what it was, but it's been a while since we've been here. And so, hi Abe, hi other viewers, and we're so on the stream. What we do besides, oh, there's a puppy. On the stream, what we do here is we talk about family tree research. We do some gymnastics to try to keep from showing living people's private information. But we talk about my tree, other people's trees. I've been doing this kind of research for way over 20 years now, but I didn't get any good at it until more recently. And I'm trying to be honest, we started the streaming process because the people in my regular life are tired of hearing me talk about this. They have seen as much of it as I can get them to be interested in. So this is my attempt at an outlet to talk to people who are interested in it as much as me. And so today, as a result of a viewer question that I got over the last week, I thought we would take a look at, oh, nice use of emote, Abe. I thought we might take a look at some strategies for managing wild guesses in your tree. And what I mean by that is at some point we have the various brick walls. In a prior stream on my Hammond tree, we kind of left off talking about William Cross and Eliza Bigelow. And there happens to be this big mystery / total mess that is happening over on her side of the tree that is interesting for talking about the thing that I got asked a question about. And so that is when you have wild speculation, you've got a brick wall and you have a guess. You have some candidates for what might be an answer to something that's on your tree. How do you indicate that without one of the great sort of cardinal rules that I've had in doing this kind of research is that I violate every single time I try to add new stuff to a tree. Honestly, I'm bad at this. Is I always think that I can just stash something here without fully notating it and that I'll remember when I come back to it later. And that is the greatest lie, that probably the biggest lie that genealogists tell ourselves about our own work is, oh yeah, I'll know what that was. How many people are in this tree? This is just This is just my grandfather's tree, right? I have four separate trees for the different, each of them off of the branches of my respective grandparents. So I have four major trees that cover my family. And just this tree has, let's go find out. Oh, for heaven's sake, ignore those. 3,053, no, yes, people. 3,053 people in it. Just this one branch. And this is it's one of my better researched branches, right? That's a lot of people. And I have four separate trees and I do research for friends. But even if you're only researching your own, the fact is you're going to wander off and do this branch and then you're going to go do this other branch and you will forget why you put the thing you put. You will. And so over time I have come up with a bunch of little, you can kind of see some of it on the screen. I'm going to talk you through all of my weird notations that help me remember what the heck I was thinking when I put people in the tree. So that when I come back to them, because I'm going to wander off for, like on this stream, even, right, from week to week, we have looked at different people's trees, different branches of this tree. We've left stuff unfinished from previous sessions. That is a thing that happens. And so I'm going to come back around to this in months from now or even years from now, right? Because for a long time I didn't touch the Hammond tree at all. I'd gotten it as far as I could get it with what I knew at the time. And then all of a sudden a bunch of new information came up on one of my mother's branches. And spent a ton of time going deep on researching new records that were coming up out of Poland and finding a bunch of really cool stuff about my Polish relatives. And so then this Hammond tree sat, and by the time I came back to it, there's zero chance that I'm going to remember what I was thinking when I was here. This is one of the great things that yet another thing that I like about doing work on ancestry specifically, because what I'm going to talk about today is very ancestry specific. When you are dealing with family search and their shared global tree and WikiTree and their shared global tree, the protocols are different because you're not going to formally put in completely wild guesses about things because that is a shared tree that other people are referring to. So if I'm just making stuff up, I'm not going to put it out in the public sphere. That's one of the reasons I keep most of my trees on Ancestry private, like super duper private, extra secret private. Let me go to the Ancestry settings and I'll show you what I mean by that. Because there are a couple of levels of sharing that we care about privacy settings here. So we go into tree settings, we go into privacy settings. Ancestry really wants you to default to making your tree public. That's what they ask you to do when you create it. And it's not that I'm stingy. The reason I say no is I don't want to be the source of somebody else coming through and copying all of my information. If it's right, I don't mind as much that people copy it because this is likely to be their relatives just as much as mine. I don't own the information, and I'm not planning on writing a book or doing anything to monetize this stuff, right? So I don't care if people copy things that I know confidently are right. However, my trees on Ancestry contain a lot of kind of sandboxy stuff, right? These are things that I can keep for myself and use for my research before I share them out with the world. And so I actually, for most of my trees, I don't want them to be public because I want the flexibility to put in information that may be wrong. And I don't want to worry about being the source of 87 million people copying and pasting my information because they're not going to have all the caveats and they don't care whether there's sources on the stuff or not. They just copy it. And next thing you know, the internet thinks it's true. And so I don't want to do that. And so to be diligent about keeping my private speculative research private, I do two things. One, when you create the tree, is that you can say you want the tree to be private, and that's fine. That's great. Private still means this thing. Some information about deceased individuals, including name, birth year, and birthplace, but also relationship, will appear in Ancestry search results. So what that means is if I think if I want to speculate that so and so might be so and so's parent, and I want to put that in the tree and build it out and see if I can make the case for it, which is a thing I do, we'll talk about that today. uh, that's going to look to somebody doing an ancestry search like this person is this person's parent, and they're not going to see that I'm just guessing and that I don't actually know and that I'm doing it as a test. So, what I also want to do is come explicitly in here, go to clicking here, tree settings, and then go to the privacy settings tab. And I actually want to check the box that says prevent your tree from being found in searches. Again, I'm not doing this because I'm selfish about the data. I'm doing this because I'm protective about making, but I want my ancestry tree to be a place that I can be wrong. I want it to be that place for me. The things that I've done due diligence on, I can share in other ways. I can make a public version of the tree that I share, and I can put it on WikiTree, which is what I tend to do. Right. So if I have stuff that I've done the work, I've proved it out, I have good sources, I'm confident that this is the right stuff, I actually choose to go put it on WikiTree. I haven't gotten as much into family search yet, but I probably will go in and try to touch those trees up and include all my sources and include all the proof of how I know the stuff. So on Ancestry, it's meant to be my place that I can afford to be wrong. And in order to feel good about being wrong, I'm going to make sure that my tree is both private and not coming up in people's searches, because I don't want them to even copy the sketch of information off the search thinking that it's right. I don't even want to really have the conversation, right? Um, that means I'm going to be less discoverable by cousins, and I'm going to have less people on it, fewer people on Ancestry finding me who could potentially offer me information. That is the trade-off. It's why I maintain more than one tree, and I actually have, if we look at my list of trees, you can see here that this one is my public tree that has my entire line. I mentioned I have 4 major trees for my grandparents. I have them all brought together to attach to my DNA results because I need all of them. And that one is just an outline. It's much sketchier than the information that's in my major trees. So, do I overthink this? Absolutely, I do. I totally do. That's my thing. But it's a way of keeping the information organized that makes me feel better about it. So here we are in my primary Hammond tree. This is the thing where, so it's, as you saw in the settings, it's super private, but sorry, I need to do that. Let's just bring up the DNA tree, because the DNA tree will give you an idea of this is what people looking in public can see. That's going to be, let's get those living people off of there. So let's go look at the equivalent of that over here. We're going to look at Grandpa's tree here. Good enough. Right, we'll just go ahead and go to Eliza Bigelow. So what you'll notice is, and I actually got some of this speculation in here too, so we'll talk about that. You will notice that Eliza Bigelow is here, and most of the siblings are I just don't enter them at all. Yes, why is there weird stuff going on here? We'll talk about that later in the stream. But this version of the tree, a little easier to see if we do it over here. Here we go. Cleaner, right? This version of the tree, very stripped down to just my direct ancestors, and a few times we'll have, other spouses of the ancestors, and sometimes another child or a sibling, if I have a super good reason to put them in here. And then you'll notice that I also have these color-coded DNA symbols that are to let me know, it's to let me know a bunch of stuff. And so let's switch to the pedigree view. This ends up being really similar. Actually, no, I like it better in the family view. No. Oh no, there's a thing I can do in pedigree view that I can't do here. Okay, so what I can do in pedigree view is I can actually expand these branches and let you see what the far back branches look like without redrawing the whole tree. So that's helpful. So this gives you an idea of what I'm doing a ton of stuff on here on my public tree. And the main reason that this exists is that having all of the ancestors If everybody did this, the shared public trees would be so correct, right? If we were diligent about the shared public trees and we could have confidence that the information in them was correct, we could do a lot more, right? But you, Abe, and I, and if you're on Ancestry, you've seen this. You've seen that there's a lot of garbage in the shared public trees. And it's kind of, I mean, look, most people that are on here to do something that's easy and fun, and they're going to follow the path that Ancestry makes easiest for them. And there's not a lot of hardcore researchers as a percentage of the world, right? So also of Ancestry. And with all those ads and people wanting to do their DNA and they just want to go see the pictures of the ships and stuff. What I have learned over the last many years is that, and I kind of especially learned this on WikiTree, is that a lot of people do this for fun, and being wrong is just as much fun for them as being right. And so stomping on their fun isn't terribly useful. It's just that for those of us that are trying to do serious research, we have to figure out how to get around the people that are just here for fun. I don't want to ruin I no longer care about ruining their fun. I joke about it. I talk about crushing people's dreams. Right? Because part of the fun is believing erroneously that you're descended from somebody on Mayflower. And to me, there's a difference between being able to actually prove it and just making it up or copying it out of bad trees. But on the other hand, that's kind of an elitist position. So uh, let the people have their fun, but can I keep them out of my way? And can I try to not contribute to, bad research? Anyway, what I'm trying to do here on the DNA tree is I'm creating just enough for Ancestry's DNA match features to work. And this is a thing that drives me a little bit nuts about Ancestry. And I'm intentionally not going to show you Ancestry DNA research right now or their results right now because that is a whole list of living people who have not consented to be on my stream. So, like, literally, that's all the people that I match with are people that are living and I've not asked permission. So, I'm not going to show you my DNA results list. I got to figure out other ways to talk about it. But the thing that makes me so sad is that the people who come in for fun have their DNA results. They maybe get back their little ethnicity estimate, um, which I have, great. But the point of doing DNA on Ancestry, because it has limitations compared to other DNA sites that you could use. They don't do proper mitochondrial DNA and they don't do proper Y DNA. I don't know what on earth they're thinking not doing proper Y DNA. That seems like a no-brainer, but they don't yet. Don't know. Family tree DNA is the one that does Y chromosome, which is your male line. So if you are male or you have a male relative, do that test. It will give you your basically you for Western folks, it's usually going to be your name, your surname line. Right. So if I had my brother do the Y DNA test, we would get back information about our Hammond line, assuming that that's an unbroken line of Hammonds and that there's not a non-paternal event, which there could be, but we don't think there is. But there could be. Anyway, what Ancestry does, however, that makes it, I think, hands down the best mass market Ancestry DNA, a genealogical DNA site, hands down, is that you can take your DNA results and connect them to a tree that you have built. So you tell Ancestry, this DNA result belongs to the person who is represented in this tree by this person, right? These are the same people. And then what it's going to do is it's going to traverse your whole tree and it's going to look at people who have DNA matches with you. And if they've linked a tree, it's going to traverse their whole tree and it's going to find the people that match in your trees and tell you how you are related. And over the years since they released the first Ancestry DNA results, it actually has gotten better at it's combining not just their own tree, and this is where other people's public trees becomes potentially an issue, but it's going to actually combine your tree, other people's trees, your tree, your DNA matches trees, and other people's trees into this kind of, I think of it as like Ancestry's database contains, my 20 some trees that I've created, some of which mine are overlapping. right? So let's say, for example, we've got Uriah Cross and Anna Payne in this tree. They're also in the Hammond tree. And this one only lists one of their children, but my other tree lists all their other children. And there are lots of other descendants of William Cross who have trees that they've built. And so Ancestry's got this giant database that has all these somewhat duplicate, somewhat overlapping trees. They have easily enough data to build a giant shared world, one world family tree. A huge percentage of the data it has is wrong, but be that as it may, like they can at least combine in the back end and not show it to anybody. They can combine all the collective research that different people have done, and they have a notion of kind of what a giant shared family tree might look like. And so what is fascinating to me now is that they are using that back end data to say, you have your tree, your DNA match has this other tree. You both have dead ends that if we look at other people's trees and fill those in, it suggests that you all might have a common ancestor here that neither of you has in your own actual trees, or that you have but they don't have. So they'll have, I've got people who've only put in the first 4 people, and then Ancestry's filled in the 6 or 7 that take them up to the common ancestor with me. And in some cases, I actually know enough to have a pretty good idea that that data is correct because I've researched those siblings. Right? But I'm seeing Ancestry fill it in on their tree that's unfinished. And so that's the point is Ancestry DNA, when you link it to a tree, starts throwing you all kinds of ancestry hints, DNA related hints. The new, relatively new, newish, the through lines feature, which is where we're getting these little icons here. Oh, wait, can I? Yes, I can. Cheryl's DNA test, through lines, icons. See, so we've got the through lines icons is telling me that this guy has, can I show that without showing the living people? Probably not. I better not. I should test it. But these little icons are, and they only go back so far because that's about how far back DNA is reliable. The reason I have color coding is to remind me what generations the DNA is reliable and where it's really sketchy. But through lines is actually going to take you to a view where it shows you, here's how you may be connected, and a lot of that is going to be stuff that's filled in by Ancestry. So it is based on the strength of having all of these people's trees in it. And so I am able, therefore, to go through my DNA results and say, hey, look, the reason that I can be fairly confident that Uriah Cross and Anna Payne are accurate in my tree, I think they are probably correct, is that I have DNA connections to half a dozen people that are descended from other children of Uriah and Anne, other children of theirs. If it was other children of William, I would put the note here on William, which I have done, right? But it's actually through other of William's siblings. And then I have other children of Noah and Mary, and then other children of Abraham and Rebecca, and so on up the tree. The little p here is to indicate that that is actually on my paternal side. That means I don't have the match to Abraham and Ruth here, but my aunt does. She is a generation closer. And so that is actually better. It's more reliable for her than it is for me because it's a generation closer. So, um, so we have a public version of the tree. And we have my private version of the tree that has a ton more data. I have copied over some of the icons so that I can see. It helps me as I'm looking at the tree. I want to see where I have lines that I feel confident about. I'll probably slip up and use the word proven a few times, and I probably shouldn't do that. I should probably call it something else because it's not definitive proof. It's just highly, highly suggestive sources, evidence, right? But this is to allow us to kind of see how well or how well is this tree built out. Now, the other thing you will notice, I have this crazy title of this tree. Where are we? Why am I looking at that? No, let me look at tree settings. That's not what I want. Okay. I have this crazy title. It says in there, speculative, for the love of God, please don't copy things out of this tree. Because the DNA tree, specifically, gives me a place to put wild guesses. Let's flip over and look at Eliza Bigelow's tree, and I will show you what we mean by that. So, how do I go about telling this story? What is the best way? Let me start here. Let me start here and see if this looks right. That looks a little better. Okay, once upon a time. How we got to this challenge. Once upon a time, we were looking for the family of Eliza Bigelow, the wife of William Cross. What do we know about Eliza Bigelow? I'm going to go back here where there's probably more information about her. This is where we've been working. We knew at one point that she had married. This is actually S. Urbanowski. I can't remember his first name, if it was Stephen or something. Is a cousin. Hi, cousin. And had sent over a bunch of information about William Cross. In a previous stream, we talked about how William Cross was super shady. And was he the shady one? Yeah. No, Chester was super shady. Chester was shady. Sorry, William. William's not shady. He just married a lot of people. He had a lot of marriages. And so originally, I didn't have a whole lot on him, and I got the first information, and I did the nice thing of putting the note in here that says, where did I get this data? So I had gotten a list of his wives and marriage dates from a cousin who had done some additional research. And then, as I plugged that information in here, it prompted Ancestry Hints to come up that allowed me to be connected to sources that verify that information. That's one of the nice things about plugging in speculative information into Ancestry, is that later on, as Ancestry adds new records, this 10,000 Vital Records of New York didn't used to be a source on Ancestry when I first started. It wasn't available. When they added it, those little green leafy things came up, and they said, hey, we found some records that match your stuff. And it is because I had plugged in these marriage dates that I knew from a cousin that I didn't otherwise have a source from. And so I added a note here to remind me, where did I get that from? And I had fair amount of confidence. Like, he could have, I didn't have him send me the packet of photocopies or whatever of the originals. I figured it'll come up eventually, and it did. And then those things allow me to place, okay, that probably is this person in the census, and so forth. So William here had a whole bunch of wives. And this wife with whom he had, no, he pretty much had children with all of these wives, didn't he? We got the list of children. Yes, they had a Lucy and a Lucinda. I don't know. I don't know why, but they definitely did. And so we had figured out, when we were looking at Betsy Cross back in the day, this, I think, is actually where we left off on the previous stream. Chester is the shady guy. He's the one who, she died young, and then he abandoned his later wife and their children. But we found Betsy back in the day when Betsy was my brick wall, because she was for a good long time. We had found her in the census, married with William, I think. Yep, Chester, and she's going by Mariah. So she was Mariah Elizabeth and went by either Mariah or Betsy, and that was confusing. Her gravestone says Mariah Elizabeth Betsy Cross or something like that. And so we have her here with Chester, with their children, including Ella, who's my great-great-grandmother. So we have her in this household, and then she passes away later that same year, and her gravestone is on Find a Grave, and it has the information, specifically like her full name, birth, her dates, and her husband's name, wife of C.C. Wilcox. So that's there. So we had that, but we were looking for her in the 1850 census. And for a long time, we had 4 different Maria Crosses who were the right age, who were born in New York, who were just in various places, and all of them were plausible for this Mariah. So for a long time, I just sat with, I have these 4 records. It could be any one of her. I don't know which one it is. I don't know which one she is. And from my cousin, I got that um, that if you went and found Mariah's original marriage record, which I didn't have, um, and Wisconsin history is just an index, so it just has the spouse's names. But the cousin had gone and found the actual marriage record in Wisconsin. And the Wisconsin, oh, and here it is. Well, no, this is just the index. Is this it? That's also not a good link anymore. Great. Fantastic. But had found the real record and said on the actual record, because she's only 17, she's not of full age, the person who signed as a witness here, we noted here, was this guy named Willis Benham. And if you just have the marriage record, you don't know who that is. But he's the person who signs as her guardian, saying that she can marry. And so, or a witness or whatever. So he's a signatory to the marriage. So who's this Willis Benham? Well, the thing that unlocks a little bit is that of the 4 records that could plausibly have been Betsy or Mariah, was one of these was Mariah Cross, 1834 in New York, living in the household with Willis Benham. And hallelujah, because Cross is a very common name, and Maria is a very common name, and Elizabeth's a very common name. So finally we get dialed into somebody who is not a very common name. Yay, it's Willis Benham. I'm going to go with not a very common name. And so having those linked together meant that we could now say, okay, this is the 1850 census record for my Mariah Cross. Yay! So we have at least that. Out of those 4, we've narrowed it to the 1. What we then find out, and then of course, because I'm talking to a cousin, it unlocks a whole bunch of other stuff. So Harriet is Harriet Cross, who marries Willis Benham, is Mariah's sister. And so then that, I didn't have to go guess and speculate as to that because I got it for free from my cousin. And so the cousin says, hey, this is Harriet. It's actually Mariah's half sister. And if we go look at Harriet, we get more information about her. Oh, I wonder if her, is her marriage record in here? Because it might be by now. Let's see what kind of hints we have for Harriet. That's not her. That's the UK. That's fine. That's fine. Yes, those are all probably her. Yeah, those are probably all her. That's pretty cool. There's Harriet again. But what we get, oh yeah. See here, we get one. This one here. One of Harriet's children's records lists her maiden name as Harriet Cross. Great. And then cousin knew a whole bunch about William Cross here, that Harriet was the daughter of his previous marriage, and his first wife had died young, and a worrying number of his spouses died young and or in childbirth. Always a little weird to see that. And then that unlocks, now that we know we're looking at William, we know from the guardianship record when he died, it lists his minor children, including, let's see, Mariah was married by then, I think. So, but it places also the migration pattern from upstate New York to Michigan, and Wisconsin is also kind of in here, and so it kind of ties everybody together. So this is all good stuff that we get from a cousin. And so then we have that the one of William's wives who was the mother of Betsy is supposed to be this Eliza Bigelow. And Eliza, we found her burial is on Find a Grave. There's a stone for her in Michigan, and she died within about a week of the birth date given for Betsy. Right, so the dates are a little odd because it has her dying before Betsy is supposed to be born. Yeah, Betsy's birth date is given as the 25th of November, and Eliza's death date is given as the 22nd of November. And so one of those is obviously wrong, or both. However, this is what the records say. It's just kind of what we have right now. But like clearly what has happened is that Mother Eliza had complications from childbirth and died at some point very close to when her last daughter Betsy was born, and that's my second great great grandmother. Okay. So, um that left us with, we didn't get from the cousin anything about who Eliza Bigelow was. So I've opened up this whole like one new generation thanks to information from cousin. Later on, that gets validated by lots of good records that go along to support it. But we still have the question of where's Eliza Bigelow from? And in my traversing of Google, I found that some trees were saying that Eliza was the daughter of somebody named Zenas Bigelow. Boy, oh boy, we love those uncommon names. Those are good. Those are great. And so I didn't have any proof. And for a lot of years, I just kind of set it there of like, I didn't have any proof. And so the first thing we want to do when we have that sort of supposition, I see an online tree that says, or I see more than one online tree. And so here begins the complicated relationship that we who want to try to do diligent research have with uh, other people's online trees that have no sources. Is we get into these arguments in the forums on Wikitree often enough, and there's truth to it. There's a decent chance that if it's out there in somebody's tree and they copied it, they might have copied it from something that was correct. Right? It might have come from somewhere real. Like that information may have come from something that is actually true. A good example is that the like family Bibles or family records get hand copied, and a bunch of stuff on my mother's side, we had hand copied records, including some of the old LDS church family group sheet templates that you could tear off of a pad. Like we had those filled in that had been done by some like my grandmother's grandmother and had been written not on the tear off sheets, right, but were handwritten notes that had been passed down in the generations that were basically correct. And those weren't anybody's sources. That was people's memories of, oh, and then there was this cousin Edna, you know. And so we had those. The information leads to people who were correct and existed and who were related to us in the way that they say they were related to them. But there's no sources backing any of that stuff up. And so what I like to try to do is backfill, put that that stuff in. If I just put that out on the web, and in some cases I probably have in the past, of this comes from my family's handwritten notes, it's going to go out and potentially get copied by people into trees and not have any sources, but still be fortunate to be correct. Surprise, it's right. And so when I see information on other people's trees that has no sources, but I see it in more than one place, I think maybe they copied it from, maybe there are records for this. Maybe somebody had a family Bible. Maybe they do go back to a common source. There are times when that doesn't hold, when there might be something that is when there is a common mistake that everybody made. When you get back into, we encounter this a lot in the original colonist research in New England of the colonizing folks from who came over from England. A lot of times there are known errors that then get reproduced, and so it's useful to know what those errors were. But in this case, this is something where let's entertain that. Let's see if it comes from somewhere. And with Zenas being such a cool name, it seemed like something we'd be able to research. And this puts us in the black hole of upstate New York. New York records are improving literally by the day today. The availability of older records in the state of New York is getting better and better literally every day. I've talked about on this stream before, there is a project called Reclaim the Records that has a specific bone to pick with the state of New York. But they're what they've been trying to do through various legal actions and FOIA requests and other good stuff is to get records that were created by public agencies using taxpayer money to become available to the public and the taxpayers. This is not talking about current day privacy violating stuff. It's records that are hundreds of years old that uh, Ancestry's gone around and tried, and other sites have gone and tried to buy the rights to these things that were public records that were created with our ancestors' tax money, and have tried to put some of these things that should be public records behind a paywall. And so Reclaim the Records is fighting all kinds of wonderful legal actions to make sure that the records that were created by the Library of Congress and by other public state agencies remain in the public domain, because we own them. That's our heritage. We should have that. And so they're trying to make sure that they don't become the property of private companies that are then going to charge you a fee to access them. So yay. We are huge Reclaim the Records fans on the stream. Yay. Shout out for them. They are awesome. Anyway, because of their work, there continue to be records released from the state of New York. I will give Ancestry a teensy bit of credit that even when they don't have the paywall, even when they don't have the exclusive rights to those records, they tend to still make them available, which is good. And that should also make them hopefully able to be accessed on Family Search eventually. It's just a matter of, are the digital images going to be put up? Reclaim the Records is putting together their own site to make some of these that should be public also available. So you may be cobbling them together from a number of other links. So all good. And yes, it is frustrating that Ancestry does some of that shady stuff, and that I do give them my money, and it is, yes, like bummer. So I don't know. I assuage my guilt a little bit by vocally supporting Reclaim the Records, and feel free to donate to them. Oh, anyway, good stuff. Because of that, this bottomless pit black hole, the black hole where information goes to never be seen again, of upstate New York, is starting to open up, and that is super helpful. So the vital records in New York in particular are difficult to get. At the times when some of the little towns were first being founded by the first colonists to move into New York, sometimes the records don't exist, as in where my family in Vermont, because they weren't kept. So in some cases, we won't be able to solve that problem. But in other cases, they were kept and they're just not being shared. Different problem. So here we have Eliza Bigelow. We don't have her in any census records. She won't be named in any census records because the census didn't start naming people other than the head of household until 1850, and she died before then. So in the 1830 census, for example, though she was living, we won't know where she was, because she'll be listed as a check mark underneath the name of the head of household, whoever she was living with. We now know that she married William Cross in 1826, so she'll be in William Cross's household. Do we even know where that was? I think we do, actually. Yes, we do. So she's in here, presumably as female, age 20 to 29, I think. Maybe 15 through 19. No, I think she's 20 through 29. So she's here. That's her. So we can assume that this is Eliza Bigelow in here. But we can't prove it because they didn't write her name down. That wasn't recorded. We can suppose that let's see, the younger, we've got an elder person living here. We've got a female under 5. We've got 2 older men. That's probably, let's see. So one of those is William, and one of those is probably either one of William's siblings or a farmhand. And then we have probably a parent, but we don't know which one. And then we have one. Oh, and then we have, is that going to be Harriet? No. No, that's older, so that we don't know who that is. That could be the spouse of that other person, right? So it could be a couple, a sibling and a sibling-in-law. We have one child under the age of 5. That's going to be Eliza. I don't know why Harriet's not in this household. Right, so so we're making some guesses, because that's too old. That's too old to be young Harriet. Anyway, we expect that Eliza's in this household. The middle initial O helps us with that too. And we know that that's the location that they're likely living in. So we go back to Eliza. She will have also been living in 1820, but she wouldn't have been named anywhere, and we don't know where she was living. And she would have been in the 1810, represented somehow in the 1810 census, but we won't be able to find her by name. And if we don't know who her parents were, then we won't be able to find what household she was in. So at this point, my cousin's information runs out. I believe he doesn't know that she's the daughter of Zenas Bigelow, but some online trees are saying that she might be. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave the attempting to be more definitive Hammond tree, and I'm going to bop over to the DNA tree. And I'm going to play a little game that is fishing for DNA information. Fishing. We're going to fish for DNA information by saying, so in this case, we're going to have a lot. There's probably another place in the tree that I'm doing this that might look better. Yeah. So for example, over here, we got an example of a fishing expedition. We got Joseph Wilcox. We are pretty confident that his father was John Wilcox, but we don't know. And we know that John Wilcox was married to somebody named Anna. Probably there's a grave marker for an Anna Wilcox, but it's very, very damaged. But we think we know that that's who that is. But we don't know what her maiden name was. We don't know what her birth name was. And we don't actually know who her parents were. And so one of the things that we can do in a DNA tree is you'll notice that I'm adding in her birth name, but to remind myself, because I'm going to go away and I'm going to come back months from now, to remind myself that I don't actually know that that's true. And this one also is one that comes from other people's trees. I'm putting her in with a question mark. And then I'm putting in her supposed parents with question marks. And that does a couple things. When I'm traversing the tree, I know that they're question marks. And even more usefully, when I go look at the list of people in the tree, we go to Davis. I'm going to see in this list that there are some Davises I am confident about that are in the tree because I've researched them, and there are some Davises in the tree that are question marks because I don't know yet that I'm right about those. There's actually, because Davis is a common name, there's actually two different branches of Davis in the tree. That's why we have a mix of some Wales and some Rhode Island. They're not Welsh from Rhode Island. But anyway, it's to remind me. And also, finally, when we go look at the hints in list form for this tree, when I get back hints for somebody named Davis, I want to be reminded when I'm in this view right here. I want to be reminded that this is a person I'm not actually even confident belongs in my tree. I don't know. Unfortunately, I think when people copy from the tree, I think Ancestry actually automatically strips the question mark off. This makes me sad. But it's at least a tool for me, because remember, this is also a public tree. So, but when I'm going through here and looking at, ignore the fact that the question mark shows up here. That is an Ancestry bug. It does bother me that happens. But this Joseph Davis is in here as a reminder that I don't actually know for sure that that's my ancestor. And why I care about that is it dictates a little bit as I'm looking through these records. How much mental energy am I going to put into adding all those records to that person, resolving all those hints, researching that person very thoroughly? I am actually going to make a point of waiting, especially because right here, Anna Davis is the questionable link. We don't know that Joseph Davis is the parent of my ancestor, Anna Wilcox. We do not know that because we don't even know that that's correct. And so the question mark reminds me, don't get emotionally invested in building out a very detailed profile for Joseph Davis until we know whether he even belongs in my tree. And especially because Joseph Davis himself is then pretty well researched and comes from a family that is pretty well researched. Don't go rushing off to fill in that whole tree until you know whether or not this connection is real. There's a DNA problem in this example, in the Anna Davis example, that I'm not going to cover right now. We may come back to it on this stream. We may do it on a different stream. So just so you know, like, there's a thing going on. Oh, there's an error here. Hang on, I gotta fix this. I gotta fix that. There we go. Fix. Got it. That is sometimes when Ancestry adds a relative from another record, they put them in as living because they don't know the date. Yeah. So when I see it, I got to fix it. Okay, let's go back to Bigelow. Let's go back to our buddy Eliza Bigelow here. So that was just to make it a little easier to see, because there is some complicated nonsense going on this tree. And now we're going to talk about this journey, because this thing is nuts. So, Eliza, we had speculation that she was the daughter of Zenas Bigelow. And this part, Zenas himself is not where things get crazy. Zenas, we then said, let's put Zenas Bigelow in the tree with a question mark. You'll notice it's gone now, but at the time it had a question mark. So we got Eliza. Let's add her parent Zenas as a question mark, and then let's go see what we can learn about Zenas's family. So we don't have anything from Eliza's looking upwards that's going to prove that she's the daughter of Zenas that we found for her, because we would have looked for an 1850 census. That doesn't help us. She was deceased by then. She's also married by then, so it doesn't help us there. If we found him in the 1850 census, I wouldn't expect her to be in his household anyway. So what we now have to do to try to make the connection is we want to go research just enough about Zenas to see if we can get at Eliza the other way. Did Zenas have a daughter named Eliza at all? And then what can we do to prove that our Eliza was his, if he even did? But can we get there? So now we're 50 minutes into the stream. We're almost halfway through the stream, and we're finally getting to what I said was the point of the whole stream. Go me. This is where we talk about what are some of the things that we do to speculate in the system. And so with Zenas, I don't remember which way I did it. I don't remember if I created a whole separate Bigelow tree, because that's one way to do it. I don't think I did, but let's go look. It might still be there. Investigate. So I have, check it, this list of, yes, I manage a lot of trees, that I preface with the word investigation. That helps because it clusters them all together alphabetically, and I can just see them, that they're all here. And all of these are different branches. This is mine. This one's mine. That one's mine. That one's mine. That one's mine. That one is a friend of mine's. This one is mine. And this one we'll talk about on the stream in the future. And this one is mine. So most of those are different branches of my tree that I am trying to investigate. I think I have, the investigation Phelps Crow is the one that's relevant to what we're doing today. So, just confusingly, if it's just one person, one family, I will. So there's a couple different ways. If we want to say, look, Zenas Bigelow is an interesting figure who might be the father of Eliza Bigelow in my tree. And I've talked about how I want to try to keep these trees kind of clean. Talked about that on the stream a bazillion times before. I don't like having a ton of information in a tree that I have to then go tear out later, because it makes the tree messy. It causes Ancestry to throw me a bunch of hints that I don't want because they're not relevant. Lots of stuff. Can be really annoying. So I try to be guarded about it, but I want to take advantage of Ancestry sources and their hints and their search to be able to figure out whether this person belongs in the tree and if they are correct. So for Zenas, I'm going to add him in with a question mark. And let me go look at, what if we, hang on, what if we opened up, where's my stream tree? Where are you? Oh, right. Stream tree is over here. This guy. Okay. Remember this? This is the tree we were building out on the stream originally under my old free account. Yes, this, okay, sorry. Yes, this is a much better way to do it. Let's do this. We don't know a whole lot about Eliza Bigelow right here, right? And so what we want, this is just much, much easier. Ah, yeah. See, remember I said that she had a, oh, she has a gravestone. Yes. It has her date of death, November 22nd. There we go. So we have, no. So here we have Eliza Bigelow. Where's that record? Interesting. Okay. That's Mrs. Eliza Bigelow, so she's not a Mrs. Bigelow. All right. So here we have, all right, that's gravestone. This verifies who her spouse was, but not her parents. That's not even her. That's verifying her maiden name in the death certificate of one of her children, another one of her children, right? So we're feeling pretty good about the maiden name. We've got a bunch of maiden name because we have all these child's death records. Cool. But we think she might be the daughter of Zenas Bigelow. Ancestry is actually going to offer me that as a hint because Ancestry knows from my other tree that's who she's the daughter of. But let's go ahead and do here. We're going to go Zenas, and I'm going to add Bigelow with a question mark. And then what I can do, oh really? You think so, huh? Yeah, that's just that. That's just this. That's fine. We could do that. I'm gonna skip it for now. So then we go to Zenas. Poof. Whole bunch of hints come up. A bunch of those hints are drawing from my other trees that have him in it. But the first thing I get when, okay, we're going to ignore that for now. So what we get is Zenas Bigelow just by putting in the name because we're fortunate to have something that's an unusual name. We get a bunch of hints that we can now start to look at, like, what is up, right? What's up with this guy? And the stuff that I'm going to find more interesting is remember that Eliza and, hang on, let's go look at her record. Keep him open in this tab. Let's look at hers. They got married in upstate New York in Genesee County. In all likelihood, that's where, if not both of them, then at least Eliza was probably living there at that time. So we're going to be interested in records that would connect us to a Zenas Bigelow in Genesee County. And so here, I think it wasn't quite this easy when I got it, but jackpot. Notice one of the problems that we're going to have with indexing of records on Zenas Bigelow is that the transcribers are not going to know what to do with that name, right? So we have the benefit of it being an unusual name, but we have the disadvantage of it being one that's going to be misread a lot, and that's what's going to happen here. So if we go look at this record, I actually want to go look at the record page here. I added all these corrections myself, right? Remember, submitted by me. But we found New York State probate records is one of the things that's already out. It's on Family Search. They are not well indexed anywhere. Ancestry is starting to index them. Family Search, not so much. So you have to go through, but oftentimes you can find the image of the index page of the will book and then use that to navigate through the images of the will book. So you can do it. It's a bit more of a slug. But if we look here, it's down here. It's the second half. You can see where if you didn't already know that the name was Zenas, I'm not, no shade on transcribers at all. If I were trying to transcribe this record, I would not know what on earth to do with that name. And so we get a problem where somebody put it in and they said that looks like an L. And I'm like, yeah, yes. You know what? I will give you that. It looks like an L. Up here too. What on earth is that letter? Is that an R or is it an or a U or an N? Is that an O or an A? Eh, who knows, right? Well, we know because we knew from elsewhere that Zenus was the name we were looking for. So if I know that I'm looking for the name Zenus, I feel pretty good. It's not an absolute lock, but I feel pretty good about it. Um, I particularly like, so this is, they're granting administration on his estate to, as the administrator of his estate to somebody named Betsy Bigelow. We're going to make an assumption that that's his daughter's Eliza is too young for that. Betsy is a nickname for Elizabeth. I like the fact that Eliza's mother may have been named Elizabeth because maybe she's named after her, and then they call one Betsy and one Eliza because anyway. So I like that. It's not that's not proof, but I enjoy it. And so what we have here is is that Betsy's named as the administrator of Zenus's estate. That's all there is in this record. We don't have a will. This is not actually the guardianship record. It is really just that one half page. And it doesn't tell us. No, it does. He died intestate, meaning no will. Super sad. He does not have a will. Super duper sad. That's very bad. But we also now know that he died sometime before. Oh, what's the date on that? Where is it? Something the day of May 7th, probably. 7th day of May, 1808, 1808. New York forms all have also the year, how long since the independence. Very cute how they do that. Anyway, so 1808. So he died sometime before 1808. Probably recent, probably pretty soon before, because administering his estate was something that Betsy would have needed to do to get everything legally in order to be able to have whatever property she was going to get. So she would have been motivated to go file this pretty soon after he passed in order for her to have a way of living. So most likely, if this is in May of 1808, it's probably sometime in 1808, probably sometime in April that he died, if not even the first week in May. She would not have waited very long to do this particular legal thing. So we have this. Okay, yay, go us. Going back to, oh, nope, that's not what I wanted. I want that tab back open. So we're going to go back here. So now we know in our world, hang on, let's get back to Zenus. We now know that we can add in based on that. Oh, and that probate is just entirely wrong. It said 1808. If we review that and add it to his record, Zenus Bigelow, we're going to go ahead and say that that's his name. I'm going to not add this. That's not helpful. This is 7th of May, 1808. Oh, they said 1832 because it was in the 32nd year of our independence, 32 years after independence. And the transcriber thought that meant 1832, which it does not. Death, 1808. We're going to say probably died in Genesee County. Boy, I spell that wrong all the time, by the way. Okay. 1 N, 1 S, 2 E's. Well, 4 E's. Okay, so we have that now that he died in about 1808. I could have put about in front of that. Now we have all kinds of other hints for him. We have a census of him living in 1800. And look at again, right? It's transcribed as an L instead of a Z. We're now going to have to know to go look for that, right? I'm getting this for free because I already did that on my other tree. I told Ancestry that this thing that you think is an L is actually a Z. When it's you looking for somebody with a relative who's got a handwriting issue, right? If you're looking for that, you're going to be the one who's going to have to think, well, what might a Z have looked like? Right? Or just look for the surname Bigelow and then go through and read what there is and say, oh, yeah, I could see how they would have gotten an L out of that. And then you know to go take that. So if I see Linus Bigelow in the list, I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm going to take that. Okay. So this is probably him, and that's going to be himself, two daughters under the age of 10, and wife younger than age 25. I imagine. Yep, seems about right. Uh, we saw from Eliza's Find a Grave that they think she was born about 1799, so that would put her as one of these two females under 10, which is not terribly precise. But that seems like, so we could choose to take that. I'm choosing to take it on the strength of the name, right? Because I think that name says Zenas. I don't think I don't think there are two Zenuses, and I would be going to look for, hang on, so it's Ontario County. I would want to go look for, where is Ontario County, New York? Is it near Genesee County? Yes, it is, because they're both near Rochester. If I wanted to be sure about that, I could go Genesee County, New York, and it would give me that they are about that close. That's close enough. All right, so it means that it would place Zenas living around this area for a while in 1800, and then moving to Batavia, where he eventually died. I feel fine about that. That feels good. I also feel fine about these birth records, but what those are not doing is the birth records are not helping me with the question of uh, is he Eliza's father? That's what I'm not getting, right? I don't have that information from this. So this is where it's tempting to go ahead and throw all this stuff in. I might go ahead and throw in a birth date here, right? I'll take this because I do believe that this is him. This is going to get me his parents. If you saw there that there was a Solomon and Elizabeth, so I might choose to add those. Here, I'm going to save that. It didn't offer me to add the parents, so I could then go ahead and do that with a question mark. And again, I don't want to get too crazy because finding information about Solomon Bigelow is not going to help me answer the question, was Zenas the father of my Eliza? Doesn't help me do that. I am going to put it in here just because otherwise I'm going to forget, right? So I've got that. They are in there with no sources, and they got question marks. So I should know when I come back to them that that stuff is very shady and to take a dim view of it. But especially right now, I'm still trying to prove this connection. I don't know that he's her father. So what I want to figure out is what's going to help me do that. And we now know that Zenas Bigelow died well before Eliza married William Cross, which means we're not going to find, even if she had been a minor at this time, which her gravestone suggests she wasn't, because her gravestone thinks she was born in 1799. I'll go ahead and add that just so that we have it. Because then Ancestry is also going to tell us how old she was, right? Okay. So she's 27, right? 26, 27 when she gets married. So her parents probably didn't sign anyway because she wasn't young enough to need guardian's permission to marry. But regardless, her father died when she was 8. So he's not on there. So we're not going to get that. But what else might we get? What are we going to get? Well, let's turn back to here because this is where we got good information from our friends over at Family Search. Let's go open this link. Righto. Sign in. By going through, so we had, where are we at? We had the intestate administration record for Zenas Bigelow here, indicating that he died sometime in 1808. That gives us a thing we can take back to the Family Search website to go through their vastly broader collection of probate records with enough information to narrow our search and try to find our guy. What we mean is here, the index, it allowed us, Ancestry also has this, so I bounce back and forth. But here is, remember I told you, the books themselves have indexes in them that were handwritten by the people who created the books. So that if you can find, and then that page was imaged and it is part of the collection. So if you can find the image of the index page, which is what we have right here, this is a beautiful thing, right? Look, we're actually super lucky here. This is a better quality index record than I've ever seen, honestly. It's one of the best ones I've ever seen. And so what it has is all of this amazing information that gives us a chronology of what all happened during the settlement of Zenas Bigelow's estate. We also have a bit of an accidental gift from the person who wrote this record, which is that is a much more recognizable cursive letter Z. So the other one that we had over in the administration record that we looked at had something that was plausibly a Z but looked a lot like an L. This one, yes, someone who didn't know could mistake that for a J and might call him Jonas. I'd be wanting to go searching on Jonas. But with the combination of those two things, because that is literally referring to the exact record we just looked at that had the other shaped Z. That means that tells me I'm very confident that that's a Z. And then this is beautifully handwritten to be clearly to say Zenas EE. That's an N, that's an A, that's an S. I feel great about all that. And that is the exact date of the record that we were just looking at. Letters of administration were granted. And it tells us which book and which page that record is on. Well, that's the record we found, right? That was the first record we found. But now that we've linked that record to this index, we can follow all the way through the rest of the book and just figure out, okay, this is which book it's in. That's what volume of the book, that's what page it's on. We will be able to go look through the entire history of those records, right? We've got the surrogates, right? The letters of administration book, the surrogates records book, and the letters of guardianship book are going to have all of these things in them that we can then go read to find out. We don't have the life story of Zenas Bigelow, but we sure do have the death story. So we get a ton of glorious data in there. And you can see that what I did was I've used a combination of there's Family Search, American Ancestors, Family Search, Ancestry, and more Family Search. And what I've done is I've added all of those as web links so that I can find them later. And they don't allow me to link them as sources, the web links. I wish they would, but they don't. So, but what I can then do is I can also plug in facts here, if relevant. I haven't here. And what I also have is over here. So we now know that his wife, we know because one of the later records, there, see, here's my original, this is one of my first notes saying the thing I just told you on the stream. Betsy Bigelow is named as the administratrix of Zenas's estate. Eliza is named Eliza, and she named her daughter Betsy. So we're thinking, yeah, it's a pretty good idea. Not only that that was Zenas's wife, but that there's a pretty good chance that that was Eliza's mother, right? Because she named her daughter after her. So, again, it's not a super uncommon name, so right, like I could obviously be wrong about that. But here I've listed those records from Zenas's estate that name Betsy. I have also gone through and linked them onto Betsy's profile because they tell a story. In this case, they tell a more important story about Betsy than they do about Zenas. And specifically, though, the thing that opens everything up for us is, you will recall here Guardianship of infant in 1812. Guardian of infant appointed in 1812. And that's going to be the minor children of Zenas Bigelow. If we think that Eliza was born in 1799 or 1800, she would not have been any older than about 12 or 13, which would have been considered infant. She would have been a minor children. So she might be named right there in the probate record. Let's go see if that's true. So here we are on Family Search, having found the Letters of Guardianship book, Volume 1. And when we look at the image of the page itself, we can see that it has page 7 handwritten on it. Letters of Guardianship, Book 1, page 7. So that is how we browsed through and found this bad boy. Do I have this open twice? I sure do. All right, well, we'll close one of them. We'll look at it this way. Here we go. Oh, we got some handwriting going on here. Okay, people of the state of New York, by the grace of God, free and independent. Love New York. To Alva Jones, greeting. Whereas you have been legally something. Doop, 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 doop. I'm going to skip over those because I can't read them. Something. The guardian of Tamsin Bigelow, an infant daughter of Zenas Bigelow, deceased, and have also been, legally appointed. Legally, that's not what it says. Okay. Legally appointed guardian of. That says Eliza. It does. It says Eliza. E-L-I-Z-A. Eliza Bigelow. This one, I don't know what this one says. It's either Elsie with an S or Elrie with an R. Still don't know what it says. Still don't know who that is. And Zenas Bigelow, Jr. 3 other infant children of the said Zenas Bigelow deceased. And whereas you have signified your willingness to take upon you the something and duty of a guardian as aforesaid by something jointly with your sureties, a bond condition that you shall faithfully in all things discharge the duty of a guardian as aforesaid according to the laws of this state. Now therefore we do allow and appoint you, the said Alva Jones, to be guardian of the aforesaid Tamsin Bigelow. What a mess this handwriting is. Yes, it could be Elvira. It could be other stuff, right? I'm going to go with that this is Eliza Bigelow, Elsie or Elrie Bigelow. Probably Elsie, honestly, but we don't, I'm not confident. Elsie Bigelow and Zenas Bigelow, respectively, with such authority and control over the said several and wards and each of their property, real and personal, as by law, unto a guardian, appoint by the surrogate court surrogate in any appertain. Something. So, Alva Jones has been appointed as the guardian of Tamsin Bigelow was, we find out later that Zenas had a first wife with a daughter, Tamsin. His first wife died. He married again to this unknown Betsy. And then with Betsy, he has presumably these 3 children, Eliza, Elsie, and Zenas. And therefore, we now have a record that says we're in Genesee County. We've got an Eliza Bigelow, daughter of Zenas, who is the right age. Do we have a rock solid 1000% proof that it's our Eliza? I feel good about it, right? What I might then be looking for is any connection between Tamsin and Eliza. I think what we then find is that I have DNA connection to descendants of Tamsin. And then that was enough for me to feel like Tamsin, especially being a less common name, I felt like I could kind of lock it in with all of that stuff. So in order to get there, what I have to do is build out this tree with the question marks. So now we've got, let's go ahead and add Betsy Bigelow question mark. And then we can add Zenas. And we know from Zenas's hints, we have the record of his first marriage because that pops up in these hints here. We have a whole life story that we now can build for Zenas, that says that he was born in New Hampshire, migrated to Vermont, and then migrated to upstate New York, where he died. And but he had previously, when he was in New Hampshire, Vermont area, had married Mary Kelly, and then whenever she died, and he has this other daughter. I'm just going to add kind of the sketchiest that I can get away with adding, which is we're going to go ahead and put Tamsin Bigelow here. She's not the daughter of Betsy. She's the daughter of Zenas, and I'm not entering Mary, but she's the daughter of Mary Kelly. There. So we now know that Eliza has this half-sister. So when that pops up in DNA results, now I'm starting to get the pieces put together, and I feel pretty good about Zenas being the right guy, right? And so, at some point, well, putting Tamsin in the tree is actually a thing that would allow the DNA result to pop up. So if I put Zenas in my DNA tree with a question mark, remember, so here we are back on the DNA tree. I got Zenas in here with a question mark. I've also got Elizabeth and Solomon Bigelow, who are maybe his parents. I got them in there, and originally I've got them in there with question marks. Right? I've got them in there with question marks because I don't know for sure that these are going to be the right people. But eventually, what happens, and we know that this, I can go look for it, but I'm gonna not show you the DNA results because I don't want to show you all the info about the cousin. Well, there's two of these. Well, let's not have that be two of those. Is we find that we get back, if we go look in the DNA through lines, we find that there are descendants of Tamsin Bigelow, who is the daughter of Zenas and Mary, that I have a DNA connection to. And so when I hit that point, I come in here, I put the pretty picture on here to remind myself, hey, yes, I believe that this Zenas Bigelow relationship is verified, is supported by DNA. Notice that I'm trying not to say proven by, right? Right? It's not proof because there are other reasons I might have a DNA connection to that person, but it's pretty strongly suggestive and I like it. So I'm keeping that record. And that actually, I can tell that that's what I've done here is I don't have a DNA connection yet to Betsy because my connection to Zenas is through his other marriage. Right? It's his. So I don't have a DNA connection that proves that I'm right about Betsy being the mother of Eliza. I would have to know, which I do not, I would have to know where Betsy Bigelow came from. So if I go look here, go look for Betsy Bigelow. So here's where, this is where things get genuinely weird. Remember I promised you an hour and a half ago that it was going to be weird and complicated? It's been a little bit, right? I've made y'all jump around a whole bunch. But this is where things get legit weird. If we go in and look at, where is it? Betsy Bigelow. Okay. 1812 is the report that I want to look at. This settlement report. So we saw the guardianship record, didn't even name Betsy at all, right? It's appointing guardianship to this Alva Jones. We don't even know who that is. But here is where we have something interesting, because this is again listed in the index for Zenas Bigelow's estate. Check this out. It's now 1812, right? Zenas died in 1808. His wife The administrator of his estate was Betsy Bigelow. And now, this is where we have a thing that starts to stitch some new pieces together. We have somebody new with a funky name. We have Zerah Phelps. And boy, oh boy, Zenas Zerah. Zenas Zerah. Betsy has a thing for people with Z's in their names. I don't know. Zerah Phelps and Betsy, his wife, which said Betsy is administratrix of Zenas Bigelow, deceased. It's just right there. You don't always get it that cleanly, but there it is. It's just one half of one sentence that says Betsy, who was in fact the widow of Zenas Bigelow, deceased, used to be Betsy Bigelow, has remarried to this dude named Zerah Phelps. And because of the fact that women didn't really have their own rights at the time, they got a name that this legal action is being brought by her new husband, Zerah Phelps. Yeah. I don't know. Records wise, the sexism is helpful because it causes them to lay out exactly who she married. And so now we know where she went. If it had just named, although it would have said Betsy Phelps, right? So maybe it would have been just fine if she'd have had her rights and so forth. But now we know that Betsy, sometime between, my notes told me that the record in 1811 named her as Betsy Bigelow, widow of Zenas, and then 1812 named her as Betsy, wife of Zerah Phelps. So sometime between 1811 and 1812, she remarried to this Zerah Phelps. Great. So blah, 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 legal stuff, right? He is now co-acting with Betsy, now Betsy Phelps, blah, 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 settlement of the estate. This is where the money's going to go. Great, good for them, right? So that's fine. So now what we know is we can plug in that Elizabeth or Betsy Bigelow, I went ahead and filled in Elizabeth, assuming that that may have been her baptized name, her baptism name, because that might help me get better records out of the hints. And then we know that she is Bigelow and Phelps. And you will see, I am going to go ahead and change this. All right, Bigelow Phelps. We've talked about on the stream before, I think, that I use the parentheses to indicate that this is married names. It's so that I know who it is when I see them in a list. I know who, but I also know that that's not her birth name. I'm not leaving it blank because otherwise you end up with 50 people in your list in your tree all named Elizabeth Blank. And then when those come up in hints, you don't know which Elizabeth Blank it is. And it also doesn't give you as good a search results. So I put the married names in here, but I put them in parentheses so that I know that that's not her birth name. I only have her married name. It also alphabetizes differently in the results, so I know I have a whole list of women whose birth names I don't know. Okay, so then we add in, and I do this other funky thing of Zerah Phelps. I put, when I have somebody in the tree who is not blood related to me, but I want them in the tree for a reason. Like, I want Zerah Phelps in this tree because I'm going to want to go get records for him. I want to see if he has any connection to Eliza or any of the siblings, right? Did they end up living with him or did they go off and live with Alva Jones? I might even put in Alva Jones as the guardian and put him with these brackets. I had to do some trial and error to figure out which symbols Ancestry would accept. And I do double brackets because it's just easy. It makes it really easy to see. And I use double brackets when it is a spouse. I learned to put a space in between the brackets and the name because when I go to the tree search and I want to go search for, does it work? Yes. If the bracket is touching the name, it won't work. It won't come up in the search. If it's not touching, it will work and it will come up in the search. Silly Ancestry trick. So I went ahead and plugged in Zerah Phelps because I thought, hey, you know, also because of legal, the legal records mean that anything going on with Betsy, her land, her inheritance, her dower, um, her children, any of that stuff. If he lives long enough, if he lives to be to 1850, which he won't, but right, if he were to live to 1850, he might have a household where all the people would be listed by name. And I do want this guy, even though he's not blood related to me, I said. So I'm going to go ahead and plug him into the tree. And it happened to be the case, I didn't actually originally add Deborah Crow in here, but it happened to be the case that, oh, okay, Zira Phelps originally married Deborah Crow. Zenas Bigelow originally married Betsy, whose last name we don't know. The two of them ended up living nearby each other in Genesee County. Deborah died at some point before 1811, before 1812, right? So Zira is a widower. Betsy is a widow. They're settling out their various estates or what have you, and they live nearby, and then there they go, right? That two widows marry each other. Awesome, great, good story. We don't care about Deborah Crow's not important in this story. We don't care, right? So now I've got this tree that has just, let's do that over here because you'll be able to see better what it looks like. So we got Betsy Bigelow. We now know enough to take the question mark off. Zenas Bigelow is legit. We're keeping him, right? Yay! That also means I can go back and fill in all those details about Zenas Bigelow that I had from the other sources. I can fill in his other marriage. That'll be great. I got his daughter Tamsin. So we got Betsy Bigelow. We also have that we know that Betsy is Betsy Bigelow Phelps. Yippee. That's great. I might want to go try to find out, did she marry, like if he died again, did she marry again? Right? If Zira, oh yeah, we got to add her other spouse, right? Let's add her other spouse. Zira Phelps. So we're going to add Zira Phelps. Phelps. We're going to go ahead and start doing my clever brackety trick over in this tree. We don't know anything about him. We don't know when he was born, when he died, no whatever. We just know his name. All right, so we got Zira Phelps. Okay, so now let's go look at her tree because we're going to get to the really puzzling thing that occurred by putting this fishy stuff. So here's what we have that's pretty well spelled out. And we now know that Tamsin, we're going to go ahead and put Tamsin, is half-sister here. And we can make her, give her mother, which is Mary. Turns out that's Kelly or Kelsey. And I'm going to go ahead and put Bigelow. There. No, actually I don't need to put Bigelow. Okay, fine. All right, so there's Mary, Kelly, or Kelsey, and she dies, and so forth. Okay, is she going to show up? Do I have you as a spouse? Yes, I do. Okay, fine. Great, great, great. Let's go back there. So now here's this sort of cleaner version of what we know, right? And we don't care. We don't care about Mary Kelly's parents, so I'm going to go ahead and say no. I don't care. I'm sure that's probably right, but I don't care about it. So I want to dismiss the hint, make it go away. Oh, look, her mother's name was Tamsin. Yeah, great. That's how her daughter's name came to be Tamsin. Great, fine. I feel great about it. So here's what we know. We've now pieced together that Eliza Bigelow was the daughter of Zenas Bigelow, probably the daughter of Betsy Bigelow, although not 100% certain. We won't know that with any more confidence unless we can figure out when Zenas and Betsy got married. We don't know that. It is upstate New York where records go to die, so we don't know. Someday we may find it. We may find that it was two frontiers and we don't know, right? Now, we're going to ignore this potential father for the moment because I think I know where that comes from and I think it's my fault. So we're going to not go look at that because we're going to talk about how did we find this mystery involving Betsy Bigelow and where she may have come from. So this is where we have speculative trees and DNA and craziness. Just totally, things get kind of completely nuts. And so what we have is I have built out a DNA linked tree that has this much in it. And by virtue of having put just Zenas in the tree, we got the connection through Tamsin. We started to see, okay, Zenas is kind of filling in. And I put in Betsy and I put in Zira because that's just what I do. Oh, the other thing is that Zena, we don't know for sure how old Betsy was. So she and Zira may have had children together. And if they had children together, that would have been later. That would have been happening in the 18 teens. Maybe those children together would be DNA matches. So that seems cool. Okay, great. So far, so good. The crazy thing happens that Ancestry, and bless Ancestry, DNA for getting a little bit confused. Ancestry pops up this weirdness. Where? Nope, not here, not there, not there, not there, not there. Where is it? Ancestry pops up this, yes, this craziness. This, right here. This. This guy. John Crow Phelps. Pops up. Looks like from the icon I'm seeing that it wasn't a match on me personally. It was a match on my paternal aunt. She's a generation closer. She has more DNA to match, more DNA from that line than I do because mine's been diluted by my mother's DNA. But she has all DNA on my father's side. Um, she is her DNA is 100% my father's side, right? My DNA is only 50% my father's side. So she's got more opportunities to match. She matches on descendants of John Crow Phelps. And I said, Eureka! I wondered if Betsy and Zira didn't have children together. But wait, do you see the problem? John Crow Phelps is a child of Zira Phelps's first marriage to not my ancestor Betsy. And you can see from when he approximately was born in 1800 that that is too early by 11 or 12 years. It is too early for him to have been the son of Betsy because Betsy was married to Zenas at that time and was busy having Eliza at about exactly that time. Now, it's possible to have what they call the NPE is the in DNA. What we find is uh, you will sometimes see it called a non-paternal event or a non-paternity event or whatever. There are a couple of phrases that I'm not remembering correctly where we are trying to maybe do a not so judgy way of saying that somebody's father is not who you expected them to be. That based on the marriage records and the legal records, that those maybe don't match the DNA. And for a lot of people doing DNA research, that can be a traumatic finding. I'm very fortunate that this is third, fourth, fifth, sixth grandparents back. I'm not emotionally invested in whether these people are all bearing the children with the people that they said they were. I just want to know, right? So it's not emotionally devastating to me to think that something else may have been going on here. It's just interesting. But we do try to be sensitive about if it's more recent, if it's family you actually knew, that can be absolutely huge. So, Y-DNA for people in the male line can give you answers to that. So, for example, if I go do a bunch of research, if I have my brother do tests, and my brother and I have DNA tested that we are actually full siblings, like that part we know. We know that he is descended from our father. We know from my aunt's DNA that we are all descended from. Like the non-paternal event is not in our recent history among people we knew. But we could do if my brother's Hammond DNA, Y-DNA, showed that he was actually a Jones, we would know that somewhere back in the line that uh, somebody had a Hammond child with an actual father named Jones. We would find that out. So people find that out. If it's further back, I think for most of us it's less traumatic, although that can be frustrating if you thought that you were going to do a name study and be like all about the glorious lineage of Hammond and you find out that you're actually a Jones. So that can be a letdown. But then you can go do the glorious lineage of your branch of Jones. Good luck. So far, it looks like our Hammond line is the Hammond line, but if it's not, we'll go find the one that it is. That's not what this is, though, right? Or we don't know. We don't know. So the first thing we got to look at is Zenas and Betsy Bigelow and Zira and Deborah Phelps were contemporaries who lived in the same town. So, as a non paternity event, we could say, okay, why am I related to somebody who should be an unrelated Phelps? The first thing we might look at is, could John Crow Phelps have been actually the child of Betsy? Well, non paternity events are a thing, non maternity events are much trickier, right? It is possible that Betsy here, who is married to Zenas, could have borne a child with any father. And the legal situation at the time, the legal situation at the time is such that any child that she bore would have been legally viewed as a child of Zenas regardless, whether they knew or didn't know, right? Any child that she bore. Well, but nobody thinks that she bore John Crow Phelps. Nobody thinks that John Crow Phelps is her child, right? You don't accidentally be wrong about which mother it was. It is possible that they could have done some shuffling around if it was a scandal and the neighbors and all that. Like, totally plausible, right? We could be doing this, like, had a child for her neighbor who was infertile. I am assuming that this is not that. So, probably John Crow Phelps is not. I'm not related to John Crow Phelps because he is descended from Betsy. But what's possible, the first thing we might look at is, remember, could Eliza have actually been the daughter of Zira, right? Betsy is stepping out on Zenas in about 1800. She gets pregnant with Eliza. That would also allow for why John and Eliza would have been born within about a year of each other. That's normally too close, right, for it to be the same mother, who's not going to be pregnant with both of them at the same time because they ain't twins. Probably. That would be super weird. We assume they're not. But could Betsy have been having an affair with Zira? And therefore, Zira is the real biological father of Eliza, even though Eliza was legally the child of Zenas. So that would be one way of accounting for this DNA relationship. But we already have the data that tells us that that's not what happened, because if Eliza were not the daughter of Zenas, then Zenas's daughter, Eliza's half sister, Tamsin, would be no biological relationship to her at all. But we got a DNA match over here. I'm waving over here where Tamsin would be. Actually, yeah, you know what? Let's add Tamsin. Let's do it. This is Tamsin's in the other tree. She's not in this tree. Let's add her in this tree. Tamsin Bigelow. We're going to add her because we care about her because she's also a DNA connection. And that DNA connection of Tamsin helps us understand what our options are for John. Right? Why are we DNA related to Eliza's half sister through her father? So we are clearly DNA related to Zenas. We already knew that. That was how we solidified this part of the tree. We already knew we are DNA related to Zenas. That means Zenas has to be Eliza's father. Probably. We'd have to go stretch further to figure out if they could, if there's any way we could be related to Tamsin without being related to Eliza. There are theoretically ways, but we're not doing that right now. That path lies madness. We had also, because we plugged in Solomon and Elizabeth, we had also discovered that we are related to siblings of Zenas. They're not in this tree, they're in the other tree, but we have that information. So we now have a DNA connection up the Bigelow line, which means Eliza is a real Bigelow. She's not a secret Phelps. She's not a secret Phelps. So Betsy is off the hook, at least in this instance, because Betsy is not accidentally the mother of John, right? We're confident about that. The lines here actually kind of help us with that, right? Betsy is not connected to John here. Betsy is not connected to Tamsin here. We are connected here. But why? So we know how we're linked to Tamsin. But why are we related to John? Why do we have DNA connection to John? We shouldn't. We should not, right? There's no reason we should be related to John because that's a step sibling. It's not a half sibling. That is straight up step. That is a child of Zerah and Deborah. And we don't have any reason to think that we're related to the Phelpses. Now, I've had this picture up the whole time, so you've been able to look in the tree and you will see what I think it is, right? What my hypothesis is. That's on here. So I think the plausible explanation goes to the thing about Betsy right here that we don't know. There's a big gaping hole in what we do know about Betsy. We don't know who she is. We don't know where she came from. We even hinted at it before. We have a DNA connection to Xeris. We don't, Zenus. Zenus, see, I knew I was going to do that. But we don't actually know about a DNA connection to Betsy, in large part because we don't know where she came from. So, let's play this hypothesis. What if the reason that Zenas and Betsy, Zerah and Deborah, what if the reason that they were neighbors together at the founding of the same small new colonist town in upstate New York, and the reason that Betsy and Zerah saw fit to get together and support each other and maybe help take care of each other's property and children. What if the reason that those two widows thought it would be good to combine their families is because they were already in-laws? Because what if, right now, we know because of the names, right? We know that Betsy can't be a sister of Zerah because she married him, right? She's not his sister. So we know that Betsy, we're not related to John because Betsy is Betsy Phelps. We've ruled that out because she married Zerah Phelps. So that's not his sister. So she's not Betsy Phelps. But who else could she have been? Oh, look, she could have been Betsy Crow. This we know because we have some idea. We know that Zerah Phelps originally married Deborah Crow. So his wife, Deborah, who must have died sometime before 1811, we don't know exactly when, but in upstate New York, she is the mother of John Crow Phelps. And as far as I can tell, he actually did have that middle name. I think it's in records that he had it. She was Deborah Crow. And so what that means is, like, why on earth do we share DNA with John Crow Phelps? Well, what if Betsy was Betsy Crow? I told you the whole story of how we got there. I told you all the logic. I like this answer. I like it. I don't know what that's good for, right? What's that good for? I like that answer. But liking it is not proof. So what I want to do at this point is I want to be able to go do some speculating. And I want to go see in particular if I can find any DNA connections that might help me shore up that theory. Any more, right? I have one. Can I find any more? We get back a few more generations here, and we're going to be too far back for DNA to be reliable. But what I want to be able to do is continue the fishing expedition. So the other problem is this. In talking about families that are in upstate New York at this time, and the documentation is really spotty, I'm likely researching people that haven't been plugged into Ancestry a million times in other trees. And so I may be doing research of stuff that we don't have any documentation for. But what I want to be able to do is to say, what can I now learn about Deborah Crow? Right? Because if Deborah and Betsy were blood related to each other, which they could be, and then Deborah died and Zenas died and these two got together. Sorry, they show up duplicate because Ancestry gets confused about complicated trees. Sorry, that's why that's happening. It just is. I can't make it show up any other way. It to me is a miracle that Ancestry can render a tree like this at all. I used to have to write software where we were trying to do a logic tree like this, and it is unbelievably difficult. I actually do not cast any shade at them at all for the fact that this looks weird. It just looks weird. I've gotten used to it. And it's kind of helpful that they're showing us, like, it makes it a little bit clearer as long as you understand that these are duplicate people, that the various complicated relationships. Um, so I want to go find out then, what can I learn about Deborah Crow? We're now playing the same sibling game that we've been playing since the very first one of my streams on the Hammond tree. Right? Is, can I find enough about this possible sibling and the sibling's parents to be able to answer the question of whether these were also my ancestors' parents? Or can I find something out that rules it out completely? And some of what I might be looking at is, I'm going to look for DNA records, but I'm also just going to look for recordy records. So I want to go find out, do we know anything about Nathaniel Crow, who is supposed to be the father of how do I know that's the father of Deborah, etc. And then that takes us to some of the things that I want to look at when I look at that couple. Nathaniel, so I found out, okay, here's Deborah. We know who her parents were because we actually have her baptism record. Deborah and Nathaniel Crow, here she is, and it names her father as Nathaniel. We have her marriage record back in Connecticut. Open. We are helped out by the fact that we have another funky name, Zero Phelps. So we now can place Deborah Crow and Zero Phelps in Connecticut. Right? So they're located in Connecticut. And then we can place her also in Connecticut nearby. There's a whole Crow family that is in. So now what we're going to do, we finally get to the thing that I started the very first few minutes of the stream with, which is this. This is my investigation tree. So I created a special tree. Yet another. Yes, I proliferate lots of trees. I created a special tree called Investigation Phelps Crow. And what I want to be able to do in this tree is, I want a place where I can add all the people that I can actually document about the Crows. And I'm doing this here because I want to add all the ones that I know I can prove the connections and get all the data on. And I don't actually know yet if what I'm looking for is there a Betsy-sized hole that I can fit my Betsy into? And the answer so far, if I get to a place where I have built out this whole family with all the siblings, this is where I'm going to take all the time to add all of them and answer all the hints and get a very clear picture in this couple of generations right in here. Because what I'm trying to establish is, could Betsy be the daughter of this family, Nathaniel and Abigail? And I don't have any question marks in here. The whole tree itself by its existence is a question mark. I am going to build out the descendants of some of these siblings. I'm going to figure out if any of these people named children similar to how Betsy named her children. I'm going to do all kinds of stuff to try to answer, like, who were these people? So I want to go figure out who Lucy married and what she named her children, and were any of them family names, and like the whole 9 yards. I want all of it. And a lot of there's question marks in here because there's even stuff in this tree that there's the known stuff about the crows, and then there's the unknown stuff. And so I'm just going, this is now a big new sandbox. It is set on ultra super secret private because I'm not sharing this research with the world yet. And what I'm trying to do in just this tree is to say, can I use what I learn in this tree to prove or disprove Betsy being the daughter of Nathaniel and Abigail right here? I might put just enough breadcrumbs back in. You'll see in the, where are we? This, no, this view. See, way too many trees. This tree. You'll see in this tree, the DNA tree, that I have added a fair amount of these folks because I am fishing for those DNA results. Right? I'm fishing for those DNA connections. And I can go into the DNA results page, into the through lines page. I can dig through it in a number of different ways to see if I'm descended. And I want all of his spouses, right? Because I might be descended from any of the other spouses, whatever other. I don't put all the children here, but I have them over here. And so a couple of things that I'm going to be looking for. If Nathaniel and Abigail had a long list of children and there isn't a gap that Betsy could possibly have fit in, we don't actually know Betsy's age or birth date. So that gives us some flexibility of she could fit into a list of children. We were guessing, am I guessing that she's, okay, so I have, what do I have that based on? I don't remember why I think that. Somewhere I've got a note on that. But what I'm trying to do is figure out, for example, if there's nowhere that she fits in the list of children, that starts to feel bad, right? If there's nowhere that, if her dates and places don't line up properly with these folks, that starts to feel bad. If I find a will, she's still living in 1830, so she's still living when Father Nathaniel dies. If I find Nathaniel's will and it doesn't mention her at all, that starts to feel bad. But I haven't found his will. Looks to me like I've been tracking land records. Land sales might help because he may have sold some of that to his children, or this property may come into the possession of his children later. That was actually how we solved the Antipas Hammond to Joseph Hammond, it was partly through inheritance of the same piece of land in Vermont. That can be a way, especially when you're dealing with, this happens to be, for some reason, well, okay, it's not that much of a mystery. It's leading up to the Revolutionary War and the time of the Revolutionary War. The records in this part of Connecticut get super sketchy. The birth records aren't as good as they had been 50 years earlier. Very, very sad. But what I'm trying to do is figure out, is there anything I can do to prove or disprove that Betsy's a child of this family? And what do I learn about this family as I go? And I've got it all in here because, and this is a moment of potential sadness, if I later find out that Betsy is not related to Abigail and Nathaniel at all, I can delete this entire tree with a few clicks. No muss, no fuss. All that research just gets blown away. Now, is that super sad because I did work on it? Yes. If I wanted to be a good citizen and share it with the people who actually are descended from Nathaniel and Abigail, I would move it over to WikiTree before I blew it away. I'd be nice and put it on a shared tree where people could find it. But then I don't need it cluttering up my research life anymore, because if I find that I'm not related to the crows and nobody that I know is related to the crows, and there's no friend of the stream who is watching me research the crows, then I probably want to at some point stop researching the crows because it's not helping me with my goals and I want to move on. Can I share what I've done up to this point? I should probably be a good person and do that. But by it being in its own separate tree, I can go hog wild, putting all the hints, resolving all the stuff, playing around in this tree as much as I care to. to figure out, but I try to remember that the research needs to be in service of answering that question of, is Betsy a child of this family? And if the research is too far afield from that, I'm probably wasting my time, because that just means more research that may have to be thrown away later if she's not a child of this family. But having this separate tree gives me a place to do that in its great fullness. I particularly want to do more work on digging through the children of Nathaniel and Abigail, who are just difficult to research, and there's not as much data on them as I would like. But this is where I'm going to go do all that digging. Oh. Oh, look, did others of the Crow family move to upstate New York? You don't say. Go look for probates, right? New York has really good probate records, really good guardianship records. What's up with John Crow Phelps? Why am I related to him? Etc., etc., right? So that's the project. So now, to sum up, because we're at time, yay. To sum up, there's a couple of different strategies that I use when I am trying to solve a puzzle and I'm trying to do speculative research. Now, the how you would do this on a shared tree is, as long as it's a person who actually existed and you just don't know whether they're related to you or not, you could go do this work on one of the big shared trees, Family Search Tree or WikiTree. You could go ahead and do the research and put it there. And all you would do is simply not create the relationship between those two people, because the relationship is not proven. This person existed. So if you find them on WikiTree, research them, put that research there. On WikiTree, what you can do is you can name in the biography, hey, I am working on, not that, but like, hey, Nathaniel Crow, there's reason to think that Nathaniel and Abigail might have been the daughter of a Betsy who married Zenas Bigelow. Her page is over here, but we're not listing her as a daughter because that is not proven. So WikiTree gives you a way to do that. I would do, Family Search doesn't have that same place to put a narrative, so I'm not sure how I would do the link. I don't know enough about their features, but you could certainly go research Nathaniel and Abigail using Family Search's records, or I could, right? You don't have any reason to, you're not related to them. But one could research Nathaniel and Abigail, make sure they have well-rounded profiles on Family Search. Someday, if we prove or disprove, all we have to do is create a link between the two profiles that exist. But here on Ancestry, I can create these additional trees. So I have a couple of ways I go about this. If it's a small search, right, before I've blown everything up, if I'm just checking the theory, I might put, where are you? In the DNA tree, I might add people with a question mark. And that allows in the DNA tree, and in this tree, I'm going to do as few people as possible. I'm not going to add a ton of extended family here. I'm going to do the minimum folks needed to try to make DNA connections off of, which is typically going to be parents and extra spouses. Right? The children may show up when Ancestry gives me the hint, it may say, and then here are their children and grandchildren, and I might go look and compare, but they don't have to be in this tree necessarily. So I don't add very many. I did add just these two, Tamsin and John, because they are the specific people that the DNA is through. But I'm not going to add all their children because I don't care. That's on the other person's tree. So I can, if it's a small hypothesis, I can just add them in here with question marks. These trees, this DNA tree, it is public, you can go look at it. There's a bazillion different branches that have different question marks on them. And what I'm doing is fishing for links to other DNA profiles, as well as other stuff, other kinds of hints. For the more involved study, at some point, if I say, look, I want to see if it could be that Betsy was not Deborah's sister, but could be her cousin. So then I want to go look at, does Nathaniel have siblings? And what were their children's names? We did a similar exercise with Antipas Hammond back in the day. I think there was a Hammond investigation tree that once I merged it back into the main tree because it was proven, Then I deleted it because I didn't need two separate ones because I'd merged it together. Ancestry itself does not have a merge feature. I used external software to do that. But I might go and look at something that's more involved. If I need it to be more involved, if I want to understand Nathaniel's siblings, or, right, could the relationship have been another generation up? Could Betsy have actually been Betsy Olmsted? Maybe she is the niece of, right? So she could be a cousin of Deborah's on Deborah's maternal side. So could she have been Betsy Olmsted? Well, now I want to go look at all the Olmsted siblings and all of their children. Did they have a Betsy at the correct time? Right? So that's a lot of speculation. I'm trying to just place her in this family grouping somewhere. And for that, when it gets more involved, I'm going to go and look at putting it all in a whole other tree so that I can keep everybody straight. I'm also, as you can see, I am actually building out Zira Phelps here because it's possible that maybe she was a cousin. Probably not because they got married, but they didn't have any children together. So maybe, right? So I also want to look at Phelps and just see, does Phelps turn me up any DNA results? That might make the problem more difficult, might make it sketchier, right? But it's possible. So, oh yeah, the other thing that we didn't explore the possibility of, but it certainly exists, is we didn't rule out that Deborah Crow, the mother of John Crow Phelps, she may have had an affair with Zenas Bigelow, and maybe John Crow Phelps is actually a Bigelow. We haven't ruled out that possibility, in which case Betsy and Deborah would have no biological relationship at all, right? Because the reason I would be related to John Crow Phelps is because she stepped out on Zira here and had a child with Zenas, who's my ancestor. So it could be another half sibling that way. Haven't ruled that out. That's partly why I want to look at the other children of this family. Do I have DNA connections to any of them? I'm going to look for DNA connections up to here. And so forth, right? So that would mean that Deborah's not my ancestor. It would mean I'm related to John Crow Phelps because he would be descended from Zenas, is what it would be. So I'm looking for other evidence of that in the other children. You can see that DNA result gives you a lot to have to play around with. And so you want to be figuring out what are all the possible ways that DNA match could have happened, and can I rule any of them out or rule any of them in? And I do that by looking for other DNA matches of people who are adjacent to that, right? If that's the explanation, if this was an affair, then I shouldn't have any other DNA connections to the Crow family at all, right? I might to these if more than one of them was a product of an affair, but I shouldn't have any relationship to Crow because I'm not related to Crow. That's a step relationship, right? That would just be one of Zenus's other partners. So I shouldn't, in that case, have DNA related to Crow. But if I do have DNA related to Crow, that makes this theory more plausible, that it's actually that Betsy is a Crow. Phew. So that was a roundabout way of like starting here in the first 5 minutes and then coming back to it in the last 5 minutes. And there it was. We went a long way around. But you've seen throughout this stream then a bunch of my techniques for dealing with wild speculation and guesses and hypotheses, but also taking advantage of what we're trying to do to get those proven or disproven is take advantage of some of the good features that Ancestry offers in the form of their hints. Those are sketchy, but they can often point to useful records, and just the ability to have a private sandbox tree where I can put some of these wild guesses without worrying that it's going to get loose in the wild and people are going to copy it too promiscuously. And it allows us to take advantage of some of the features of Ancestry DNA. I haven't yet. I think what's going to have to happen for me to show you how DNA works is I'm probably going to have to prep a presentation where I take screenshots and sanitize the other people's information. And that's just work that I haven't felt like doing. It will not surprise you to know for the stream that I just show up in this office and just talk at you. I don't do a lot of prep right now. Not a big surprise. But if I do decide to put together something that's a more formal video on kind of let's talk fully about how Ancestry's DNA processes work, it's useful as heck, right? It's good. And if you're not sure whether you want to commit to sending your essence off to Ancestry to index and do God knows what with your data, it's useful to figure out what benefits it's going to give you and how the thing works. I have gotten a lot of enjoyment out of it myself. Totally understand that not everybody wants to do that. And there are, of course, other DNA services and other like there's GEDmatch and there's stuff you can do to do it by hand. I will say Ancestry really does put it on a platter for you and make a lot of things really easy. It makes it easy to get wrong too, but it's really easy to get a lot of things right, and that is very very satisfying. Even for me who try to be diligent about my research, like that instant gratification is very helpful. So, so we've taken that journey. We've shown why you might want to do those fishing expeditions. I got the phrase fishing expeditions from WikiTree. That's a thing that folks over there talk about doing. Is just kind of figuring out, well, what if this was the relationship? And it is a really exciting way to be able to break through various brick walls. You will notice the Zanus Bigelow thing was shored up by DNA. It pointed me in the right direction. But the thing that was the real proof was finding that guardianship record and saying, okay, the combination of all of these plus a guardian record that names Eliza, it feels good, and I feel like we're locked in, right? So it still does go back to records. So with all of that, hey, Kristen, good to see you. What is the P for on the top left corner of the DNA match icon? Yes, we go back here. The P means that is a match that it wasn't a match of mine. It's not my DNA that is matching that person. It is my aunt's DNA on my father's side. So the P is for paternal. I also have M's. You just haven't seen them because we haven't worked on my mother's side. But I have M's for the ones that my mother's DNA matches that I don't. So this tells me it's a link on my paternal side. I won't be able to do any generations above because they're already passed away, right? So I may at some point get my father's DNA in here, but I have my father's sister's DNA. So my aunt on that side, she's the one who is the match on John Crow Phelps. It's not actually me. So whatever that Crow and Phelps DNA is, it's apparently diluted out um, in my biology, but she has enough of it left to continue to match on this family. And then she also is the one who matches on the Bigelows. That's somewhat helpful for me because when we get back into the New England families where they've intermarried, I actually have a branch on my maternal line that also goes back to the same areas in New England. And so when we get back 10 or 12 generations and we're seeing those DNA records are really not, part of the reason they're not super reliable is you could be descended from those people have hundreds of thousands or even a million descendants in the United States now, some of the original colonists. And so you don't know necessarily which branch, but knowing that the match is on my paternal side means 50% of my tree is now out of that picture. It's not because I'm accidentally related to the Wood family through my mother, right? It's because I am at least related through my father's line. I will mention, what am I going to mention? There's one other thing. Is it here? Yes. Yes, it is. This one is trouble, and I will probably never be able to use DNA to prove this relationship because the question of was Anna A. Davis and was she descended from Joseph Davis and Comfort Langworthy? DNA will probably not, might, but probably won't help me solve this problem because I'm already descended from someone who is in that Davis family. This one is proven by really good documentation. I already know this, and so this is a sibling, which means I would expect to have DNA connection to this family already because they shared DNA. Joseph and Martha shared DNA with each other. I'm already proven to be descendants of this family. So if I have DNA that is Davis and Maxon DNA, it's not going to prove that Anna was related to this family because it might prove that. That's one of the limitations of DNA. Now, can I jump up one level further and prove that I am descended from the Langworthys? Maybe, except unfortunately, I'm already descended from the Burdicks on another line. And I'm already descended from the Brownells on another line. These families all intermarried. So I will probably, maybe if I can go up the Langworthy family, and unfortunately, this is too far back to be reliable for DNA. So I probably can't prove this line with DNA. I'll have to try to find good records. This is another upstate New York family, so maybe I will find those records someday. But I only mention that fun trivia fact at the end of the stream because that is one of the ways that DNA doesn't help us. Right? Something that we run out of. But this has been fun. Uh, Thank you all again for joining for today on the stream, letting me ramble at you. Uh, Look, my puppy was so good. He was so good. Look at him sleeping sweetly. We will continue to enjoy the puppy cam, and I'll try to be back and doing streams more reliably. As a programming note, I'm considering possibly starting to stream on some other topics other than genealogy. And I'll be interested to see. We've got 29 followers now on the stream just for genealogy, which is pretty exciting. But I've thought about maybe expanding the stream to talk about other things. So, what that may mean for all of you who are following the genealogy stream, and thank you for doing that, you may, if you're signed up to get notifications when I go live, I'm debating, right? Do I want to do those other topics on this stream where you're going to get notified of a thing that you might not be interested in? Or do I want to go create a whole other account and stream on a different account? I haven't decided yet, but just as a heads up, that is a thing that may happen. For the moment, though, I'm still committed to on the Sunday mornings when I can, which is most Sunday mornings, uh, 10 a.m. Pacific. I expect to be here having fun with genealogy. Please continue to send in your questions. Kristen, next time you think you can join, let's talk about Stephen Hammond because one of my investigation trees is him, and I think we can go through the records on him and figure out whether we agree that he's related. And we can talk a little bit more about same thing as what you have, which is you have people that your mother's DNA matches that you don't match. Same problem that I have, right? Like I think that's going to be a place where we find answers on the stream. Anyway, so let's chat and email, but maybe we can do that. I'll make sure that I can do next Sunday, but if you want to do next Sunday, we can set up to do that. And also, Abe, hi, thanks for joining. It was great to see you. Thanks everybody for being with us on the stream, and we will see you next time.